Welcome, truth seekers and trailblazers. If you didn't notice, we have some new music.
Got some new music. It's a jam.
It's a jam, definitely. Well, we are the Bigfoot, Wildman, and Boogers show, the podcast where shadows move and legends breathe. Bigfoot might be closer than you think. Every week, we trek into the unknown. We dive into eyewitness accounts, breaking down the evidence and exploring the mystery behind North America's most mysterious cryptid.
We're here to bring you real encounters, all the wild, weird, and wonderful things that go along with Bigfoot, Wildmen, and Boogers. Whether you're a diehard believer, a backyard camper, or just curious, we're thrilled to have you with us.
Before we begin, don't forget, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us grow the tribe and bring even more wild encounters out of the woods and into your ears. Now, grab your gear, steady your nerves, and let's take that first step into the woods with Mel Skahan tonight.
Ooh,
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Marion. Hi.
Thank you so much. Welcome. So, Mel, let's get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm an enrolled Native American Yakima from Central Washington, and grandfather, father, and great grandfather now, which has been fun. And
wow.
You take a lot of time thinking about how you raised your children and watch them raise their children, and now those children are raising another one.
Yep.
And just to see the generations, and hopefully that everything that you've taught them, the roots that you set for them and everything, they take and everything goes and blossoms fully for their life.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. That's beautiful.
Yes. Yep. That's all anybody could ever want for their children.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And my career, I chose, and there's been forestry here in Washington State. Mm-hmm. I worked for the U.S. Forest Service for 8 years, and then I worked for the Yakima Nation Forestry Program for 27 years. And I know this is a city inside the city, but now I work forestry for the city of Everett here in Washington State, where the only Sasquatches that I see, forest people that I get to see within a city, are cutouts and all the artwork in town, which is a lot.
I start to say there's a lot out there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so my beginnings with them has dealt around my forestry career, and it's if I had not chosen forestry, then I would not have gathered the adventures and experiences that I've had with the forest people. And I never set foot, even though I was told as a young child about them, around campfires, around friends. And if I hadn't chose forestry, I don't think I would have ever fully believed like I do now, and had taken the journey with them, and I've enjoyed it so much.
Right.
Wonderful.
Right.
Wonderful.
I completely understand that. I think people that don't experience them don't believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And it's as we have grown in experiences around them, and then to see, like the previous researchers and enthusiasts and scientists before us, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time. And so you've got new people that want to learn, have questions, want to experience everything that you have. And that's why we're here today, is to pass that knowledge on to everybody in the correct way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's one of the things that I always say, and it just absolutely drives me nuts. I call it the old guard has been hoarding the information for so long and not sharing and not allowing a lot of people to learn. There may be information that someone has that somebody else has experienced, and because nobody's sharing it, that other person doesn't know that maybe that's a normal thing that's happened to a lot of different people. So yeah, I'm always, on that soapbox preaching about share, tell people what you're experiencing and what's going on.
There are a lot of commonalities out there once you do start sharing. And
absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's new branches out there too that people have taken that don't quite understand it until they reach out to somebody like you, Jen, or you. And, and have had plenty of people reach out to me with questions and have, kind of like guided them in a correct manner rather than having them watch some television series or program that says, go out there and knock on the trees and, whistle and I throw rocks at them, get their attention.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Nope. They know you're there. You don't have to do anything. Exactly. Yeah. And for a long time, and that's, so when I started, I was taught that you went out, you knocked on the trees, you whooped and carried on. And when I started to take the expeditions over that I do, we don't do that.
Good,
I said, first of all, we don't know what we're saying. We don't know what we're saying.
Right.
If we have someone that just really, really wants to, we'll let them maybe do one or two, and that's it. Right. Because you're never going to sneak up on them and they know you're there. So we just kind of put ourselves out there as entertainment or a target or however you want to call it. Right. And let them come to us.
Right.
And that works really well for us.
Yes, Yeah. I agree as well. Because as soon as that goes into your head that you're going out to a spot, they already know that you're going to be there. And so
you're in their home.
They're just waiting for you to arrive.
They're like, oh, the entertainment's coming.
Burn, get the popcorn.
Yeah.
Here they come.
Exactly. So tell us about your first experience then.
The first experience that I had with them, I was alone, and I had been working in an area that had activity from listening to my other coworkers, but oddly enough, they didn't come out to the spot with me to work this 160 acres that I was on. So this 160 acres had like 3 different timber typings, which was a wet area, which was the lodgepole pine, the drier area being ponderosa pine, and then the mixed conifer stands around the wet areas. And so the stream had gone through half or right through the middle of this 160 acres that I was working on. And I had to cross it 5 or 6 different times. And so out in the open, could see fairly good, enough light out, no matter if it was cloudy, snowing, or anything. You still had enough light to see and kind of gauge what everything was: stumps, big rocks, bears, deer, all the wildlife. And but once you got into the creek, into the lodgepole stands, it got really thick. And some of the trees I had to squeeze through in order to maintain the heading that I was on. It was a north-south heading. And so crossing the creek was fine. But once I crossed the creek, then that's when the experiences started happening to the low grumbling growls that I the first one that I heard was a and when I heard it the first time, I wasn't quite clear of what it was, but I knew the direction that it came through because the vocalization and the energy wave, or I still don't know how to explain how they do it, but it had gone through me and I felt it, and I put my hands up and I was like doing this, and I started looking around, and then I worked my area. And then I picked up, and then I walked as I was walking to the second plot from that one, walking to the next plot. Then it did it again. This was, and then again the shot of electricity or the vibration had been associated after that grunt. That, and then I was like, okay, I said, all right. So then I started looking around because, tapping in the second time within, a 10, 15 minute span that, most animals, make a lot of noise, they would have run away.
Yeah. Right.
And, but this one, he was persistent with me, and he let me work the area out. He didn't make any other noise. I couldn't hear him moving around. And then I picked up and started working and going to the next plot. And then as soon as I put everything down, he did it the third time. And I was like, okay. I dropped to the ground because it was so thick.
Yeah.
So I dropped to the ground and I started looking all the way around me. And I focused on my right side because that's where everything was coming from. And then as I was looking, I could not see anything because the trees were so thick and it was so dark in there that you couldn't see any further than, I would say, about 30 feet.
Okay.
And so when he did it again, I said, okay, that's enough. I don't know what's going on here, who you are. I don't know if my friends are playing something on me. And so my truck was back to my north. I was taking a north-south heading, going from north to south. So I looped. I didn't go straight back to the truck because I knew it was in here somewhere.
Yeah.
So I took the long high road all the way back to the truck, which was about a third to a quarter mile away. And then as I took the long route around and then came back around to where my truck was parked, out of the creek into the opening. And then as soon as I got there, and I was like, oh, I'm safe. This is good. And then I heard just crack, crash, crack.
Oh, wow.
And then a tree had been pushed down. And I put my hands up in the air as I was taught from watching, different videos and everything to show that I was clean. And I also, I wanted to show them that I didn't have anything in my hands, even though I had a reloscope as I was going around measuring and counting the trees. When you hold something in your hand, it almost looks like something like this. So I cleared my hands, and then I said, okay, this is your area. I'm leaving. I'm going out. I'm not coming back for a while. And I drove out of there, and I went back down to the office. My coworker showed up, and I told him what was going on. And I said, I'm going to need help finishing this because I don't know what it was. And they knew immediately, because they'd been there longer and, they've had their experiences with them. And so they said, no, you can finish that spot by yourself. And I'm
like, that's not fair.
Thanks. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah.
So it took me a couple of weeks. I had other places to work, and that's where I went.
Yeah.
And then when I went back a couple of weeks later and then went back to the exact spot of my last plot, and I looked around and I'm listening and everything, and I started working it, and then I worked it as fast as I could to get out of that creek and drainage area to get back into the openings.
Right.
And but I got it finished without any other Class C or Class B or even Class A event happening, and it was a relief.
So was that the thing then that, made you go, okay, I really need to know what this is?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Once I told my friends about it, and they told me that, no, we're not going back in there because obviously they have had experiences with them, not only in that place. The Yakima Nation Reservation is 1.2 million acres, and then 3/4 of it is timbered.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is, agriculture and residential and a couple of towns. And so, there I had a lot of ground. I had a lot of ground that I would work in. That event, in my 27 years, would have many, 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 so many encounters with them, alone or with one or up to 4 or 5 people.
Yeah. So did you, out of all the encounters, have you ever had encounters that you felt like were, you were threatened, or has it always been fairly docile encounters, I guess? I mean, how would you classify them?
A lot of the encounters, 100% of them have been docile. If you want to, consider a rock or a pebble or a pine cone, fir cone, a couple of sticks thrown at you as a threatening manner, you can. But to me, they were just letting me know that they were there.
Yeah.
Even though I couldn't sense or feel them at the time. And so I was on an event with a coworker who had many, many stories. He would tell these stories of his so well. I mean, just so much emotion. And I got to work with them for about almost a month. And then we were almost finished. And we were driving out to the one of the areas, and this spot was a Ponderosa pine area. So there were big pine trees there, and there had been some logging going on, so they opened it up a little bit. And when we were driving out to the location, he saw something out his window, and he started stuttering, stammering. He wasn't making. He delayed his words, and I asked him what was going on, and he says, "There's something back there." And I go, "Well, what was it?" He goes, I don't know." And so I put the truck in reverse, and I started backing up. And he didn't say anything, as we were backing up. And then I go, "We're getting close." And then I turned to the right, and then I turned to the left to make sure that we weren't going to back into anything. And then as I turned to my left, that he yelled out, "There it goes." And so I immediately turned to the right, to his side, and I saw a figure that was large. He was muscular, didn't look like a female, looked like a male. And he was dark colored in hair. And he turned to his left, and then he started running away from us. And you could see the shoulder movement as he was running away on his back, and you could see his legs moving. And then he went from here, and then he turned to his right, and then that's when you saw the shoulder movement again, and then the side profile. But he was too far away to get a really good look at, and he was really, really fast. I mean, he got out of the area.
Yeah.
And so when he turned to his right, I remembered that I had a camera in my work vest, so I reached behind me, grabbed my work vest, opened the door, and I went running out after it. In its direction. And my coworker was, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to follow it."
Yeah, I got to get a picture.
And so as I was following the impressions, because this area had some logging debris on it.
Yeah.
As he turned, and I started following his impressions in the ground, turned to the right, and then he kind of angled off to the northeast. And then he went over the hillside, because we were kind of on a big plateau. So he went down about 50 to 60% slope, which was dirt. Wow. And then so that's when I stopped. I said, "I'm not going any further than this." And then my coworker came up to me, walked up behind me, and he goes, "Where'd it go?" And I said, "Well, looks, if you see, it went straight down that way." And he goes, I said, "We're not going any further." I said, there's no way that we would be able to keep up to it or catch the view of it.
Right.
And so we started going back, and I started putting pink ribbons in the ground of where the impressions were landing. And so on its full run, it was like 6 to 8 inches as it was turning. And then as he turned to his left and he started going away from me, then it turned into the 5-foot stride, the 7-foot stride, an 8-foot stride, 10-foot stride. And then the furthest I measured was 12 feet apart from toe to heel as he was running away. So he was fast, and he got out of there.
Yeah. Well, I meant 12-foot strides. How much ground? How fast can you cover? That's wild. That's definitely wild. Yeah. Well, and so we were talking about the encounters of them being mostly benign. And same thing for us. I've never had anything that I felt threatened. There was a couple of times where I didn't want to be in the area I was in, but I don't know that it was because of them. Right. Mm-hmm. But, what do you make of these people that have these just horrific encounters? Do you think they're ignoring, some signs? Are they going in there being disrespectful? They're not telling the whole truth. What do you think about those?
It's mostly disrespect. I've done a lot of interviews with loggers on the reservation, and they're in there to harvest and pull trees, cut trees down and pull them out of the area. So you're interfering with what they grew up with around them, and you're changing the landscape, and so we wouldn't want anybody to come in and start building apartments or taking our trees out and rebuilding roads and making everything taken away from their life, changing the plant associations and everything else like that. Right. And so those type of encounters that the loggers or people in that industry experience are going to be hostile ones, because they're destroying, or not destroying, but to us we're improving. We're improving it for the next generation, where they don't see it as that. Our generation knew that there were trees here. This is why we lived here. This is why we traveled through here. And so the other folks that experience these type of negative encounters are the people that go out and target shoot. And if they're spending the weekend or the night, and sometimes most of them will get chased out of there, because what are they shooting at? Rocks, trees. They're putting targets up in the trees. They're harming the trees. Mm-hmm. And so those type of encounters I've seen firsthand, where some of them are culturally valued. This is a cultural value area to the natives, because these wet areas that they're shooting around also are areas where they collect foods or collect the cedar tree bark to make baskets and everything. And so I've seen them, people shooting in these spots, and even those sacred trees that the Native Americans have collected these resources for. So, if you're not out to respect the area, then you will get a visit, and it won't be a positive one.
Well, and that makes complete sense, because, you hear so many people who, for the most part, they're benign incidences. It scares people, things like that. Yeah. But it's not like, we always tell people, just like, if they wanted to have you, they could have had you a long time ago. You're never going to sneak up on them. My gosh, they can probably smell us, before we ever get out of the vehicle, type of deal. Yeah. So, and like you said, I think it's a whole thing of you're being disrespectful to their homes.
And it might be harsh, but they deserve what they get. They deserve what they get.
Yeah.
They're nasty and ugly and just. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
If you're going to play the loud music and everything else like that until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, that's not. If you want to do that, then just go home and upset your regular neighbors about that. Don't go up to Sasquatch people.
Don't go out and mess with the forest people. They don't appreciate that. Yeah, right. Exactly. That's it is. Yeah. Now it's okay for them to mess with us till 3 or 4 in the morning, when we're out camping.
Well, what I've learned from them is that, they're teaching the little ones how to be around us. And the only way, like us, when we have our children, we only allow certain people around them, and then we teach them how to be around them.
Right.
And so it's the same thing that, and I always like, they're fashion critics, they're automobile critics, they're camping. It's like, oh look, the new North Face tent is out, or like
yeah. I'm gonna go mess with that one. Let me touch that one.
I gotta learn it.
Yeah. We were in Arkansas in September, and it's funny that you say they're teaching the young ones how to be around. Because we were at a private campground, very small. There's like 3 small cabins. There was 5 RV spots, and then the rest of it was some tent camping. And they spent the weekend throwing acorns and rocks on the metal roof of the cabin. And at first, it took us a few hours to catch up, because there are acorn trees and there are hickory nut trees, and just you hear them, and we just kind of,
Right.
And after a little while, one of the guys is like, that's a lot.
That's
and so he
rhythmic,
started, and he started walking around. There weren't that many acorns on the ground. So it was like, okay. So then he did throw an acorn, and it had a distinctive sound. And we found a hickory nut, and we threw that up, and there was a distinctive sound. And then we threw a very small rock on the roof, and we're like, oh, wait, that's what we're hearing. So that went on all weekend. They even got brave enough a couple of nights to come up and slap the side of the cabin, and so that stuff kind of went on all weekend. And it's like, yeah, it's the young ones, they're like, hey, watch this. I'm going to go do this. So we knew that it was the younger ones, because at one point, me and a couple other ladies, we were in a hunting blind. We put ourselves up there. We put it where they could see it. I mean, we knew we weren't, hiding or anything else. We put it out there for their curiosity. And the 3 of us sat in there. And at one point, all the men were down in the campground, and we could see the lights and that kind of stuff. They weren't coming up to us. They were staying put, and we had radios. And at one point, we were all facing different directions, and one of them came out of the woods, walks past the blind, and then turns around and goes right back into the woods. And, it was kind of, I got tickled, because it was kind of like one of those, watch what I can do. Watch this, a hold my beer moment here. Hold my beer. I'm going to go do this. Right. And it's like, it took me, even though I know they're there, I know they're real, I've seen them, my brain still was like, because I'm going, they're right there. They just came out of the woods, The other girls are like, what? So, yeah, they were young ones, because this one was only about 6 feet tall, So, yeah, they're definitely interesting.
Oh, yeah, they are. And it's a consistent learning, because, we have different, everybody that comes into those camping areas, do different things while they're there. And so that's what the behaviors, and they remember you. I have multiple people that have had multiple encounters with them, to the point where, it's like you just said, it's the testing moment of throwing things, and then seeing how far that they can go with that. And then watching the behaviors of those people, and then knowing as they continue to come back that they can trust those folks. And then, people are just like, I could smell them, I could hear them, but they treat me differently. They've accepted me, and it was fun to hear that he said they've accepted me, and so, and he goes like, yeah, I'm to the point now where I would go up to when I first started, it scared me, and then it's to the point now where I can just roll my windows down, get up there 2 o'clock in the morning, roll the windows down, even take a nap out, and just put my arm out the door, and I know they're there, but I'm not afraid of them, because they trust me. And he goes, and I had the same work truck, and so my truck broke. I was acting up, it broke down, and so I took it back to the shop. They gave me a different one. I drove up there the next morning, and then again they like the very beginning, they didn't know the truck. They didn't know I was inside, and they began to pelt me with pebbles and pine cones and fir cones and everything. And then I did my job because they kept throwing them at me. And he finished up as fast as he could, and then he drove back down. And he says, "I want my truck back." And so they got it done, and he drove back up there, and everything was fine.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a piece of private property that we go to every year. We take a small, it's not real small, but it's a smaller group of people. And the core people are always the same people that go out there. But we've been going camping the same time of the year for the last 3 years. And we have activity. The gentleman that owns the land, he's always telling us about things that happen. But so every year, same time of the year, same core people, with a few new people, but we get activity. And we just came back we had that a couple of weeks ago that we did that. And the first night out there, one of the tents, and the gentleman, he's another BFRO investigator. And he said about 4 feet up, he said it sounded like something was swiping down on the side of his tent, right? Well, his tent and mine and my husband's tent are really close together. And about the same time he was having that go on, I had woken up, I was laying there, and I heard a pop, and it woke my husband up. He thought his cot had popped when he moved. Well, he hadn't moved because I was awake. He hadn't moved at all. I think it was actually something slapped the side of the tent, and it kind of popped, and it was like, okay, that's interesting. Well, then one of the other gentlemen was telling us the next morning, he's like, about that time, he goes, I had gotten up and went behind the tent to use the bathroom. And he said, there was, in the darkness, there was a place that was darker than the rest of it. He goes, that was only about 4 feet tall. So I'm pretty sure we had a young one in amongst the tents that night.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they have, the very first year we camped out there, had some ladies that were paranormal researchers, saw it standing behind my husband and I's tent. And the next day the tracker was able to track it all the way around the campground. It had moved in amongst all the tents. So they do remember, they remember that we come out there every year about that time of the year and spend a few days out there.
Oh, yeah.
So they don't disappoint.
Have they ever called you by your name?
Not yet.
How about you, Jen?
No.
No. Have you had them do that to you?
Yes.
But it sounds like you have.
Yeah. In multiple areas.
Okay.
And it's fun that you share the tent stories. We always, we just go out there and camp, relax, let them know our intentions, who we are. We introduce ourselves when we go there, even though they know who we are already. But when you re-enter somebody's place, you always greet them, and so that's what we do. But this spot that I found a few years ago, about 8 years ago now, is about an hour and 25 minutes from where I live here in Bothell, Washington, and the very first time that I had gone up there, it was late. It was around 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And my wife, this was when I was working for the tribe and she was working in Bothell. So we'd meet halfway and then, spend the weekend with each other. So and then once I would find the place, because this was going to be a new one, I didn't have any cell service. So I was going to go in, set up camp, and then come back down and let her know where we were going to be spending the weekend. So I get up there and I lost cell service. I pull into this like about 4 or 5 camping spots. So this was small, and I had all my windows down. I had my sunroof open, and then I was going to relax for a little bit. And then as I put my seat back, then I started hearing the footsteps off to the right above me because it was a hillside. And then I heard one, and then I heard one coming closer to me. I could hear the snapping of the branches and everything. And then I hear this, and I was like, oh, okay, here we go.
Okay.
And I could hear him advancing towards me. And then I hear, it's like, that's a different pitch. There's two of them.
Yep.
So I hear the footsteps coming, getting closer. And these two were just, they knew I was there, but they were so loud that, and they were not being stealthy, quiet, or anything like that. And so I figured that they were youngsters, teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And so as they were getting closer to me, they, nothing changed. They kept talking with one another and snapping sticks and breaking sticks as they were walking through the trees. And then just before they came down to the road, and so they were up here making their way down to the road around, and then I was parked down below the main road. Then I was listening to something in the distance, and when you say you're not going to sneak up on them, you're not, because I could hear this car 3/4 of a mile away coming up the road, and so that diverted their attention from me to the vehicle coming into the road.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could actually hear the voice pitches and tones change as they came down and started talking, and then they started walking this direction towards the where the road entered this area. And then I could hear them. And I could hear the car getting closer, snap, snap, break, talk. And then that's when I got out of my car, and I was like, I'm going to walk up the road, and I'm going to walk up behind them and see what's going on. So as I got out and made it up to the main road, walked their direction to the direction of the car coming up as well, I could hear them and just talking. And then the car stopped. And then everything got silent. I stopped, no movement except for the two guys that were in the car talking with one another, because I could hear two doors open and just two voices. And then I could hear these two go from to and these two guys talking, and I'm like, no way. No. This is trying to take all of this in from them, focusing on the two guys now, lowering to a whispering, and then the two guys talking, and then the two doors closed, and then they left, and then the two went and they took a little bit, but they started walking back where I was parked, but I was on the road.
What happened?
Oh no! Did we lost him? He's frozen.
Right, you were stuck in the road.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was stuck in the road. I was on the road, and they started walking back my direction, where my car was parked. They didn't know I got out of the car, and so I was walking, and then I could hear them behind me talking and walking up above me, coming my direction, and then I scuffed the road or something, and then they stopped. And I did the reverse Sasquatch, did you hear that? Or something. And then everything went quiet. And then they started walking again. And I started walking faster because they were catching up to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I scuffed my foot on the road again, and then they stopped again, and we got quiet. And then silence. And then they started walking again and talking, and then I started almost jogging to get back to my car because they had, they were catching up to me, and then I made it back to my car, and then I kept thinking, my wife and I, we don't like when encounters happen so fast, and she's not even here yet.
Yeah.
And so I made the executive decision to vacate the area and let them have it. And so I started up my car. I kept the headlights. No, I had the headlights on, and then I left the area. And then when I turned to the right, then I put my hand out the window and I said, "See you guys later. You can have your area back. I'm out of here." And, but I've never been that close to them at that point to listen to the behavior of two of them just being so nonchalant and just like, a couple of guys,
Just you guys walking through the woods.
Walking through the woods.
Yeah.
And then go into a full on whisper,
That's wild. That's wild. Because do you find in some areas they're more like clans, families of them are more vocal than other areas, or have you found that distinction at all?
Well, when we started going back, there were a couple of howls and a couple of whoops, but ever since, as the advancement of our relationship started, they don't vocalize, at least not while we're there.
Yeah.
And I know people that have gone up into the air that they've heard vocalizations, but I think that's because they don't know who they are. And then that's when they're trying to let everybody else know in the area that we've got company.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of the private property that we go to. They're not really vocal out there. You don't hear a lot out of them. But they're around because they like to play with the old farm equipment. Mm-hmm. They'll come in there at night and bang on it with a piece. It's metal, but there's like nothing that's hanging off of it, so it would make a noise, but you'll hear something pounding on it with another piece of metal to where it's like tink, 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 tink. They'll come in and do things like that, or they did an elk call because we don't have elk here in this part of Missouri. Now, over farther on the eastern side and down into Arkansas, they've re-released elk, but where we're at, especially this piece of property, they're not common in that area, right? Okay. So I don't remember, it was like midnight, 1:00, we're sitting up on the side of the hill, just four of us talking, visiting, just listening, right? And we hear an elk call. And it's kind of almost sound like you're strangling an elk call. It's not right. Mm-hmm. And we were like, yeah, that wasn't right.
You got to work on that, buddy. Almost. You get in there.
He was getting there. He was getting there, but it was just like one of those of you're like, no.
Well, see, I mean, that lets you know how far they travel then if the elk aren't in your area.
Yes.
To go and listen to this and try to mimic it.
Yeah, because it's where that was at, I would say 50, 75 miles. Mm-hmm. Which is something that can run at a 12-foot, stride. Right. That's not going to take long to get there.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what they're built for. I mean, and so it doesn't take them long to cover a lot of ground. It does not.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah. And so when we were out the last time, we just woke up and was laying there in bed, and I'm assuming that I was the first one awake. And then I reached over and to see if my wife was up, and then she woke up, and then we heard the worst owl call ever. And we both said at the same time, that sucked. That wasn't an owl.
And it's like they do really good, but the end of it is never right.
Right.
Because you'll be like, okay, listen to that owl, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, you're like, no, that wasn't right. Yeah. It's interesting to hear the noises they do make, because you're like, wow, they do mimic well. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about hearing the car door in the middle of nowhere. Have you ever encountered that?
No, I mean, I've heard the wood knocks, but not associated with a car door. Yeah. I've come across beds. I've come across trees that limbs had been popped out of the bowl itself, and they were stacking them, getting ready to take them to make their shelter, to make their nest, so we've seen plenty of those on the Yakima Reservation.
Yeah. So, when we talk about the tree knocks, we were having this discussion not long ago. We had a gentleman that was able to demonstrate he could do the mouth pop that echoed through this very large room we were in. I know we all call them tree knocks, but it's like if you've spent any time in the woods, or at least around here, it may be a little bit different for you because of the different kind of trees you have there. But so when we're out in the woods here, a lot of times there are times when it's very hard to find a stick to pick up, to hit on a tree that will make any kind of noise. So it's like, we're kind of gravitating toward, are these mouth pops, or are they holding their hands and doing something over their mouths, because they happen so quickly. It's like, they're not walking around with a stick in their hand the whole time they're out there.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Anything they pick up is going to be, already decayed and
Could
disintegrate.
Could very well be. But yeah, we were talking about that because this gentleman was able to do it. It was amazing, and it's like, what could they do with the size of mouth that they have, and their hands, and just even their lung capacity, because it's so much greater than ours.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, when you keep, when you talk about tent experiences, I mean, I've had them right here, just outside the fabric of the tent, breathing on me, or breathing outside the tent, just as, and the volume of air that you're taking, and then the resonance of the exhale through the nose or through the upper part of the mouth, and you can just hear that. And I mean, it's just like, it's not scary, because I don't expect any negative behavior from them. And then there was something else that I heard. There was another tent visit that I had, and he was doing that. And then, I know what it was. He stood up. And so instead of his head being down by my head on my mattress outside the tent, he stood up, and then I heard this gurgling sound. And it was his stomach.
That's great.
and being in the tent, and then my wife and our friends being outside in the camp area, and it was raining, slightly raining, so they were under an awning. I could hear him moving around, using the tent as a shield to hide. So he was moving here, he was moving over here, and then he was, you see his shadow. And then this went on for an hour that he watched them. And I stayed as quiet as I could, not moving around and listening to all of this go on around me. And then they got up, and then that's when they stood up from the campfire, that's when he exited. And then 10 minutes after that, and that's when my wife came over to the tent, and I jumped out of the tent, and I whispered so loud, because we had a gentleman there that was recording, and his recorder was like about 15 to 20 feet away from where we were sleeping. And I was whispering as loud as I could. And I was all jumping up and down. And you go, mark these times, and
right? Exactly. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. You could have, millions of encounters, but to hear the stomach growl, and then hear the nasal and everything, I mean, just new experiences will happen as you keep going.
Oh yeah, and it's always exciting. I don't care what you've had, because I was one of the lucky ones. First time I ever went out, I went out on a BFRO expedition in 2019, and first night out, I didn't know what to expect. I was one of those people. I didn't realize we had them here in the middle of the country, right? I thought you guys had all the fun out there,
right?
So we went, and first night out, we had a Class A sighting, because we ended up, the group that we were in we ended up going out, and we'd been out for quite a while. And the gentleman said, let's just go sit down. It was a full moon. And he's like, let's just go out here and sit down and listen to the forest, right? And there was 10 of us in the group. And the people in the group started counting, and they're like, okay, who's where and how many? And this was all going on. I was paying attention to the girl that was next to me, all camoed out, and how, even though I knew where she was at, when I'd look back, if I didn't know she was there, I wouldn't see her. So I'm involved in that. I can hear them discussing. And about this time, 3 of the gentlemen jump up and move toward one end, because we're all sitting in a big circle. And whatever was at that end basically rolled over the berm and ran off. So we don't know if it followed us in, or if we walked in and it was there and it just froze and we just kind of sat down around it. But as they all were discussing it, because it was smaller, it was 5 feet tall, they're discussing it. We're all standing there facing that direction. And we start to hear noise behind us, myself, my husband, and this younger girl. And I turned around and took 2 or 3 steps toward the noise. And this one stepped out from behind a tree, and it was like, look at me. It was making noise. It wanted to be seen. I think it wanted us to pay attention to it so that the young one could move away.
Yep.
And at that point, my husband called the leader of the group over, and we're trying to get him. It's standing right out there. I can see it. He was so worked up over the younger one that he couldn't focus on it. And then we could start to hear movement. There was another one. So there's a couple of them. And he gets really worked up. He goes, like, that's it. We're being surrounded. We're leaving. And I'm like, no, isn't this what we came out here for? This is what we want, right?
Yeah.
And he basically told me that if I didn't come along willingly, they were going to carry me out of the forest. And I'm like, okay, this is the first night. I don't want to be the troublemaker. Okay. So, we left. Well, it followed us out. You could hear it. And we got out into the road, and one of the other groups was standing at the top of the hill, and they actually were therming. And when we got to the top of the hill, they said, you left somebody down there. We started laughing. We're like, no, we've had this discussion. There's only 10 of us. We didn't leave anybody.
Nobody was
and there. Yeah, so they were able to, he had recorded that. They were able to go back later with, I think one of the gentlemen was like 6'5", and where this thing's head was, it was roughly 7.5 feet tall. So I think it was the female, followed us out. We went back into the area the next day. We found a footprint in the mud, in a little muddy area. The area that we sat down in when we could look at it during the day was completely matted down. There were no saplings. And when you stood on the berm and looked out into the rest of the forest, there were saplings everywhere. So we'd walked in and sat into an area where they were bedding down. So we were in their bedroom. So yeah, they weren't real impressed with us. But that was the first night of the first expedition I ever went on. So I'm like, oh, doesn't that happen all the time? They're like, no, it doesn't. So at that point I was hooked. I told my husband, I said, I'm going to do this forever.
Yeah. It's definitely, when you first get into this, you're just like, what am I doing? And then you start buying all this equipment, everything that you're going to need to try to view one of these folks. And then you realize, I'm out here with something that could be anywhere from 7 to 12 feet tall. I don't know what they look like, don't know their capabilities, don't know, behaviors. And then he was just like, then that's when the people start to say, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. But the ones that continue to want to advance in this, those are the ones that they chose because they want to learn. They want to have that type of communication with them. And so that's what I think, they chose me for a reason. And I stuck with it, even though I've done some dumb things in the past. I've learned from them. And and now they're rewarding me with the relationships becoming closer and allowing me to be around the small ones like you. you know, having that trust, knowing that, you know, they, you know, like when we go to a playground, you know, you got to watch and learn, see everybody around who the kids are going to be playing with. And, you know, there's the exact same thing that they're doing with us is that we're in the playground and they're going to find out who's going to be able to play nice with everybody.
Right. And I have a friend that he's a researcher, and he said, you know, they test you. He said they see how you're going to react, right? If you scream and run and take off, then they're like, yeah, okay, that one's done. We're done with those. But he said, if they throw things at you and you don't, you know, run away, and they're doing these things and you're not running away, you're just staying put. He said, then they get braver and braver, and they come in because they're like, okay, these people aren't running away.
That will not move. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, there have been times that, yeah, we've been scared a time or two. But it's like, yeah, we're just going to stay put, you know. That was, you know, one of the incidences in Arkansas. My husband and I ended up sleeping on the screened-in porch of the cabin that they were just pelting. And they walked up and slapped the end of it about 2:30 in the morning. I happened to be awake because, of course, I had to go pee. And I'm laying there, and they slapped that, and I about jumped out of my cot because it's a screened-in porch. And, you know, if you turn a light on a screen, you can't see through it. And I'm laying there, and I'm like, okay, you know, because they've scared me at this point. My husband kind of made a little bit of noise. I'm like, okay, you're awake. I said, I'm going to go to the bathroom, because you couldn't just get up and go from porch into the house. You had to go out of the porch onto another porch to go into the house. And so the door it squeaked so bad, and I didn't want to wake half the camp up. Right. And so once he was awake, I'm like, okay, I'm going in to go to the bathroom. I came back out. I laid down, and it was really funny. I'm laying there, and all of a sudden you can hear them walking on the pea gravel on the other side of the screens. And you can hear them moving out there. And my husband goes, is that you? I said, I'm not moving. I am not making a sound here. You know, and he's like, he laid there for quite a while. And my husband's very even keel. He doesn't get excited. He's not excitable. You know, he's just as steady as a rock. And we lay there and listened to him for probably about 20 minutes. And he goes, that's it. He jumps up. He pulls his cot closer to mine. He slid a piece. You know, he slid some stuff out. And he goes, I'm completely creeped out right now, because he said, I feel like I'm being watched. And I said, yeah, I think they know we can't see them.
Right.
No, were you the protective barrier? Or
no, he was the protective barrier.
Okay.
But he came closer.
Far away, right?
Yeah.
That's a true husband and a great significant other to be able to do that, because I think most people would have used, you know, gotten closer to the house. Well,
it was funny. I had put mine right up against the house because I had a feeling, and I'm like, I don't want to wake up and be right there, and there they are, right? To wake up to that might scare me a little more than I was ready for at that point.
Right.
So I had put my cot against the house, you know, and he wasn't up against the screen by any means. But yeah, it was really funny because, like I said, he's always very even keel. You know, he doesn't get excited. And for him to get up and move his cot closer, it was like, and there was a young man that has been going on expeditions, and he was out of the camp, and he comes back in, and, you know, we're trying not to wake everybody up. So I'm just like flashing my light at him. And finally I had to kind of yell at him a little bit, and he comes running up, and we're telling him what's going on. He goes, they did the same thing to me last night, because he had slept on the porch out there. And he's like, they harassed me all night. I'm like, all right, we're coming back. We like this place, you know. So
that was one thing that, you know, on the reservation, you know, you know, like I said earlier, that my coworkers didn't say anything about their encounters or wouldn't talk about them. And then when I tried to ask other people, nobody would say anything. So I eventually went off the reservation and found the BFRO and started talking with them, and then spent like almost a decade with them, and then learning the similarities, learning the stories, the behaviors, and similarities, and then I started bringing that back. And one thing that I've always loved about being back on the closed reservation was that I was the only researcher on the Yakima reservation, and I got paid to do it because it always happened during work. I would go hunting and fishing as well, but those events happen. But most of the encounters that I've ever had with them at that time was while at work and being followed and just enjoying everything. And then as I learned, and then I started telling my coworkers that would come out with me, be aware of certain things, if you can't take it, let me know, and then we'll just walk back to the truck, and then we'll go find someplace else to work. And so it eventually came down to, oh, who are you working with today? Oh, I'm supposed to be working with Mel. Oh, he's going to use you for bait. Watch out. So the stories would get out there, Mel's using everybody for bait.
Well, and see, it's funny that you say that. We do that. We use the females as bait, right? I mean, we're less threatening, and I'm always throwing, I'll go, I'll do it, and we go out and sit, and it's interesting, it's definitely interesting. So, but if we have time, I have an event that happened I was on a BFRO expedition over the summer here in Washington State. And it was close to the last days of the event, of the weekend. And I had two guys that really wanted to learn. So they decided that, hey, Mel, where do you want to go? We want to go with you. And I said, okay, well, there's this new spot that I've been biking out there. And I said, let's go over here. Everybody else concentrates around camp. And I said, let's go out a little further. And so I told them, no matter what happens, when we're walking, keep your voices normal. Somebody hears something, keep it normal. Don't point, don't look. Just talk about the event, and then we'll just keep moving on. So as we're walking down the road, the reason we stopped with the truck was because there were trees across it. So we started walking, and then within a couple of 5 minutes, we heard the first whistle off to our left. And then so I said, okay, now we have contact. They know, they're communicating. There's probably more out here. Just keep the normal voice. And one of the guys was getting mad because he didn't hear the whistle because he was furthest on the right side of the road, not on the left side. And so we kept talking and walking and everything. And then we heard the tree knock. And then it said, okay, there it is. Did everybody get that? And, normal voices kept going. And then we went out about a mile. And so a lot of the people that go on these expeditions aren't, woods people. So, exactly.
So, you take your time with them. I explained to them, I said, if you guys have had enough, then we can turn around and go. So one of the gentlemen says, well, I don't think I can go any further. I said, that's fine. That's fine. And then I bring along the thermal, the night vision as props because I don't use them. I just use them to help settle everybody else around, get them comfortable,
right?
Being able to see things at night. And so we started talking, and then all of a sudden I started getting this zap or this tingling electricity going through me. And it started at my legs and it worked up my back. And when it got to my mid back, I told him, I says, there's somebody scanning me right now. And so I'm letting you know it's coming from behind us. And so they go, well, what is it? Oh, wait. The other guy goes, it's starting in my hands. He started going through it as well. I go, well, just keep talking through it. Let me know how it's advancing through and everything. He goes, oh yeah. He goes, is this normal? I said, he goes, I've never, never experienced anything like this before. And he was a new person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I calmed him down, kept talking with them. I said, yeah, they just want to know who you are. And then the third guy started getting it as well. And so he was like, oh, no. He goes, what is going on here? And about the time his was starting, mine was ending. And then the guy directly across from me said, mine is ending. But the second person that started going through it, he says, they're still scanning or buzzing me. And he goes, I'm feeling the tingles all over. I said, well, he likes you. And so he wants to get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah.
I'm doing everything that I can to calm him down without him just taking off, turning a light on or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then it all ended. And we're talking about what had happened. And I told them, I said, where did you guys feel it? And they said, behind you. Mm-hmm. That's where it felt like it was coming from. I said, well, that's where it started with me. So we narrowed down the location where something was projecting towards us. And then I told them about the thermal, and I told them about the night vision. So I gave it to them. And the gentleman with the thermal on my left side and the gentleman with the night vision was directly across from me, started looking around. Never seen anything like this. And then the person with the thermal started going all the way around us. And then he was looking behind me, and then he goes, there's something standing over there. I said, what are you seeing? He goes, well, he says, I've never seen anything through a thermal before, but there's something standing there, and it's right behind the tree. And I said, well, it could be a rock or, could be anything else. I said, I'll take a look. And so I looked down at the screen, and I was like, all right, well, hold it there. I go, I think you got something there. And he goes, yeah, it's not moving. So we kept looking at it, and it stood as still can be. And then it was on a flat. It's a handheld, and it's got like about a 2-inch tall monitor, 1.5 by 2 inch. So you look down at it. Then I put my phone over the top of it, and then this is the picture that I took.
Oh, wow.
I know it's not very clear, but you can.
In the center, though, you can see. That's interesting.
And so right behind the tree.
Yeah.
And so I took a couple more pictures. I said, okay, that's enough. I said, we can deport the area. I said, there's a reason why he's here, and we're not going to go any further than that. We'll respect them. Yeah. And so we, took a couple drinks of water, and then we started walking back to the truck, and then nothing else happened to us after that.
Oh,
but we went back the next day for the recreations, and it was not there. What we had seen and what we had taken a photo of was not there the next day.
Wow, that's interesting. The couple of guys here in Missouri, the last couple of years, have gone out to Washington and helped with the expeditions with the BFRO during the summer. And they're like, it is nothing like Missouri. I said, yeah, my husband has family that lives in Seattle, and we drove out there a couple of years ago, and we were driving around, and it was like, I'm like, I want to get in the woods so bad I can't stand it. But I said, it's nothing like what we're used to.
Yeah.
My aunt used to live in Wenatchee, and she still misses it dearly.
Yeah, but it's beautiful country, but it's thick. I mean, it's thick. So
thick.
Yeah.
You can go out and wander and everything like that. The first thing I teach people is, when you get to your camping area, you'll notice the fire ring, the camping ring, and everything. The people visit this spot a lot. So, they have to mark this area so that they know where to come in, where to view people. And I said, we'll go look for the high points too, where they can see down into camp. And we've located those spots. And, it's part of the teachings that, I pass on to everybody.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, we have hit, our hour mark here. I think I could talk to you all evening.
Yeah.
I would love to have you back on again if you would be so inclined to join us again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Sure.
Good. Absolutely. Well, like I said, thank you so much for coming. And, we'll have you back on because you just have some of the most interesting stories, I'm very interested in learning some of the things that you teach to people when they're out there.
Okay.
I think you are definitely on the right track there.
Well, whenever you come out here, we'll take you out. The two I frequently visit a lot. I call them Shaggy and Scooby.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Nice.
That's great. Absolutely. I would love to come out there and do it in Washington. I, like I said, got family out there and might have to tell my husband, yeah, we got to go back to Washington.
well, if you have family out here, I'm part of a committee that puts a Sasquatch conference on in Yakima, on the Yakima Reservation. It's next weekend.
Oh, okay.
Friday and Saturday. So, go to the Yakima Chamber of Commerce website and the Legends Casino website, and you'll be able to see the lineup of speakers and the times and everything else like that. So,
interesting. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
They can pay at the door and everything else as well.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And like I said, we'll definitely have you back on again.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
Jen.
Okay, tribe, that's all for this episode of the Bigfoot, Wildman, and Boogers show. Thank you for wandering the woods with us today.
If you enjoyed today's encounter and want to keep these legends alive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps keep us track of the wild and legendary encounters that make Bigfoot so special.
We'll be back soon with more mysteries, more encounters, and maybe a few hidden surprises in the shadows. Until then, keep your boots muddy, your eyes on the tree line, and remember, show me your Bigfoot.